Tilburg University and Mind Labs present TAISIG Talks, the podcast that keeps you updated on the latest developments in the field of artificial intelligence in just 1 hour.
Welcome to the 24th edition of the TAISIG Talks. TAISIG stands for the Tilburg AI Special Interest Group. My name is Pieter Spronck. I'm a professor of computer science at Tilburg University. The topic of the TAISIG Talks today is AI in education. And I have two guests here who I will ask to introduce themselves very soon now. One is Datta and the other is Matthijs from Gils. Hannes, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Datta. I'm an associate professor of marketing at the Tilburg School of Economics and Management. And I'm heading a working group at this university to bring AI tools and new educational formats into the classroom.
Thank you.
And I am Matthijs from Gils. I am hired as a junior lecturer from Tilburg AI, and I'm working together on Hannes with this 2 years project to also manage the project and to cooperate with research assistants for building our own AI tools.
Oh, so Tilburg is actually very active nowadays in artificial intelligence, not only in research, but especially, of course, in education. And that is what we're going to discuss, but we're going to discuss this in general. But I can imagine why this is an important topic, because AI has been growing enormously. Everybody knows this in recent years, and AI is getting used by people spontaneously. Students use it, teachers use it, and there is no real grip on what everybody is doing. So it's important to get a vision on that, I think. So maybe the two of you can tell me a little bit about what you think is important in artificial intelligence in education. Where should we focus on? What are your personal interests? So tell us a bit about this. Please.
Yeah, so I've been teaching 2 courses here at Tilburg University that are quite programming intense, so to say. So in these classes, students learn how to code in R, and that's a statistical programming language, and Python, which some listeners may be familiar with, and they start from scratch. And it's always been a very rough ride for my students. It's very complex to navigate, but ever since ChatGPT is out, things just go way smoother. And I talked to students about it, and they shared with me that they feel they have like a 24/7 Hannes that's always available and very knowledgeable and can explain things over and over again to them. And I've seen the quality of what they're working on, like the projects in my class, just like increase. So that was my first encounter with how students use it, and I was very positive. Of course, there are many other things that don't work very well. I can share that later, but I just see quality has increased.
Okay, well, yeah, that sounds interesting. I also teach programming, by the way, and students have to do a lot of programming. And they also use these kind of tools. And actually, then I look at their code and I start talking to them about their code. And then I realize that they don't understand their own code. So are they actually learning what they're supposed to learn?
That's one of the negative sides. Let's call this the honeymoon period, right? You don't know much about programming. You start using GPT and you think you can do it. Yeah, and obviously that's the teacher's role through teaching students in the classroom, but also to designing proper assessment that this is not happening, right? But many of my students have actually reached that level of control about what they're doing. But yeah, just blindly applying it is not going to cut it. And we need to be watching out for that and develop ways to assess it properly. But like when used properly, and I use it as a researcher. So my main function is to be a researcher. And I just see that I'm learning way better. I get a better understanding about what I'm doing. It's just a very mighty tool. But yes, we need to like prevent that students just use it without really getting it.
Yeah, and for me, especially in the first phase of learning to code, also following the course from Hannes, for me it was like I was able to learn more complex things much faster. So also we're building a web scraper, for example, and like in 6 till 8 weeks, we had a virtual computer. We had a web scraper who was running all day, 24/7, and it was were all things when I started with my masters that I was never able to do. So I would say for me that I can learn much more complex things much faster.
And the really cool thing is, I can guide students and tell them, like normally in my class, people would run their programs on their local laptops. But for my research, I'm using a lot of cloud computing. So I thought, well, that's kind of the future. I wish students can learn this. And I just give them the idea. And then with ChatGPT and also some other resources that I give to students, they just like self-teach themselves. And that's kind of how I learn things too. I have like an idea of where I want to go. I think I can do it, but I don't really know how to get there. And then I need support. And through some AI tools, the students have been getting this support. And now my students know how to run virtual computers, which is great when they go into industry.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm slightly surprised in here. Well, I am probably the oldest at this table, and I had to learn coding completely by hand. Well, Hannes, you would be next in line, but you probably also had an education in programming that did not have any AI support tools. And I don't know about you, Matthijs, but maybe you were already in the stage that AI tools were available.
Yeah, that's correct.
But the thing is that I think that when I would use AI tools, and I don't use them that often actually to code because I can do it fairly well myself, then because I always, of course, also look up on the internet how other people code things, and I understand what they do, and that is how I learn. So usually I just, even if I don't really know how to do something, I just start on it and then grab stuff, and I understand how to insert it. But if you have those AI tools at the beginning, which help you even with the easy stuff, how do you make sure that students still learn? So we're now usually only looking at the side of the student, of course, but we get to the side of the teacher later. But how do you ensure that they learn? How do you keep the quality high enough?
That's a good question. Matthijs, you just looked at me.
yeah, I know from students who are following the data science master, for example, that when doing exams, it is not allowed. So you still need to work with your code, building, for example, a Python exam. You need to build your own code without guidance from a ChatGPT.
Sure, but that's testing.
Yeah, that's testing.
That is afterwards.
That's afterwards. That's right. So in the beginning phase, I think it's important, maybe guidance from the teacher, like Hannes told, that you really learn the basics. And if you want to expand, that you, like you said, you can also see how things work instead of just copy pasting.
Another way, so in my class, I teach students basic programming concepts. I mean, the course is about something else, but they need to learn programming on the way. So, for example, looping is is a very popular, important concept in programming to do things repeatedly. So, for example, visit a list of 1,000 websites one after a time, and, for example, make a copy of some information that you see, right? So I teach students this concept of looping, and we go over and over and over this concept again. And then I have a tutorial session where my students come in and they need to work on their projects. And I actually see them work on their projects during this tutorial session. And then we can clarify questions. I look at their code. I ask them to explain this code. So I think I have a good grip on where students are and what they do. And then I can nudge them to foster more understanding or, things like that. So.
Okay. Well, the way you explain it now, I would be thinking, and this might be part of the solution, is that AI tools are fine and you can learn with them, but you still need the supervision of a teacher.
Of course.
So it's not that teachers now become less important. Maybe they become even more important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you can cater to. You need to be that light tower to guide students. And I'm not saying that maybe there is not going to be an AI-based curriculum that can do this in the future, but we're not there yet. But I want to be that light tower to guide my students. And the nice thing is you can shine different lights on different people now, because there's the supportive AI thing that can help students get there where I think they should be going. So yes, but it cannot be without it at all. See, when you do it without it, then what happens? Okay, so Data Camp is a very popular platform to learn coding.
Yes.
And we have a license here at Tilburg, for example. Many students use it. But just by doing Data Camp exercises, I haven't seen students going anywhere actually. Like, they do the tutorials, they think they can get it, it's easy exercises, but you need to apply it to a project, right? Otherwise, there is no use in it. And that is my role as a teacher, to give them these projects. So for example, one of my students, she was great in class. She obtained a very high grade. She was so creative. She built amazing things. So I referred her on to become a research assistant for one of my colleagues who needs a student with these skills. And now she can grow these skills. But like, it's my role as a teacher and coach to create these opportunities for my students. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking a lot about coding now, and of course
yeah,
AI is
too
also
much coding.
but maybe because this is indeed one place where you see AI being used a lot. And then I can imagine that the question comes up, so why would you need to learn to code yourself? Because AI can do this pretty well. Let's because I have lots of ideas about that myself. Let's hear your ideas, because you are the ones that should be the experts here.
You want to take the question, Matthijs?
Why you should learn code yourself? Well, I heard some people talking that the future of AI will be that people can talk in natural language and then don't even know to code anymore. But I think why you should learn how to code is that you really understand the concepts, and that, like Hannes told, you can really build your own projects. And for me, it's also, if I'm working on a project and I'm coding it myself, that it's I understand the concept better than just reading about it, because I really see in real life what's happening. So I'm using a database, I see those embeddings, I see it happens, and then I understand better the concept of what is in theory, or what I learn in theory.
I think when you asked this question, what I thought about are my daughters playing Lego, right? So you could say, maybe there's a machine in the future that can build any Lego model, but then it's not fun. And I think it's inherently human to be creative and to find like a way to exercise that creativity. And coding, for me and many others, like my students, it's one way to execute their creativity. You can build anything with it. Like, you can take different colored Lego building blocks and put them together, and either it's a spaceship or, I don't know, it's a horse farm. So yeah, you can build anything. So, and with coding, maybe that's just a means to the end. I think it's just like we need to give students the tools to build what they imagine. And coding helps you develop the logical reasoning that's required to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. I would formulate it slightly differently, probably. I think to code well, you need a certain way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that's not the way of thinking that many students have, but it's a way of thinking that supports certain kinds of creativity.
Yes.
And what I notice, so we have different programming courses, and we have an introductory programming course, for instance, and they just learn how to write very simple programs. And you don't need a lot of creativity for that. That's just indeed what you say, you write a loop.
Yeah.
And then I teach another class which follows that class, and there they have to become more creative. They have to actually solve new problems. And this is where lots of students begin to stumble, because they need to learn new thinking skills. I think that is part of it. So it might actually be that it's fine to use AI for those simple things at the start, but if you don't learn to do this yourself, setting that next step might be hard, and then you're missing something that you really need. On the other hand, and this ties in what you said, Matthijs, I think to describe a problem well enough that something like ChatGPT can code it already requires that skill to formulate what you actually need. But I don't know, maybe AI tools are much more able to do these things, because I don't use them for that myself, but I don't know how far they can go. So how vague can you be in your descriptions and still get what you want?
No, I think that's where nowadays is a lot of attention going to prompt engineering, what you're referring to. That if you make a prompt what is really vague, the output is also really vague, and you can get anything out of it. So of course, the more context you give to the model, the better the output will be. So that's also a very a task that people need to learn, how to work with these models, and also how to give a lot of concept, because it's if you just give like the minimal input, the output will also be minimal.
Yeah.
And I see so many people struggle with it because for decades we've been trained to Google, right? And how do you make a good Google search? You try to be as concise as possible, as few keywords as possible to get where you want to be. And then you open 20 tabs and, you try to find what you really need. But like working with the AI tools that we have to our disposal right now, these large language models, you need to be very elaborate, very precise, give context, so it's a different way. And I see many people not accepting what LLMs can do for them because they tried 3 keywords and it gives them bad results, and then they sign off.
Yeah.
So I think part of our education is also that we need to give that knowledge to everyone, because also there are a large number of students who refuse to take on AI tools. They still want to be in charge about their intellectual capabilities. Maybe they also feel threatened. So I think it's also our role to ensure for broad education of everyone on this.
Yeah.
For me, what really works well is doing it by speech recognition. So just by talking, and therefore I can just talk much longer and make a much longer prompt and tell everything I know, tell the context, and then send it to the model. And then the prompt is just much longer than when I'm typing. I'm just like, okay, it needs to be quick, it needs to be fast. But now I'm just like, sort of calling with such an AI tool, for example, ChatGPT. And then I see the output is also better. And then when I'm back home, for example, I do it during cycling. I can look at my computer, I can look at the output, and put it in a Word or whatever I need it for.
Yeah. Does this mean that we need to change certain courses, or maybe even most of the courses that we are teaching? Because if that is how programming is going to happen in the future, then teaching the programming classes as we teach them now might not be the best way to prepare students for the future.
Yeah, I mean, for my classes at least, I changed my assessment methods. It used to be a take-home assignment off campus. Now it is an on-campus assignment. Together with Tilburg AI, we're trying to develop a tool that can monitor how students use ChatGPT, and that in itself can be used to assess the ability to do prompt engineering of students, for example. So yes, I'm working on this actively, but the first action I took is change my assessment and incorporate it in my classes. Do I need to change my learning goals for this? I mean, my learning goal has always been for students to mix code snippets from the internet. You may remember this from back in the days, I need to say almost, right? Stack Overflow and these things, and you would Google and then you would reuse code. That was always a goal of my class, because I don't require my students, by the way, who start coding, right, to do it from scratch. That's just impossible. But to take something, like you said before, right, to take something existing and adapt it to be able to use it. And in a way, that's what you do with AI as well. So I didn't see the immediate need to adapt my learning goals for this class in particular.
No, but I can think that the learning goals would not change, but the way you reach those learning goals might change.
Well,
also, and what you referred in the beginning, that when you asked students about their code, they couldn't explain what they were doing. So I think also an assessment type oral examination will be much more important. And having like a teacher having some kind of guidance, like Hannes told, when you're just going to the class and work on your project together with your teacher, for example. That's a good way for a teacher also to have some control on the group. And because we can automate other tasks, maybe, you have more time for those teaching moments a teacher.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because this sounds incredibly time intensive if you gonna work with students in that way. Because I teach programming classes for 150 students simultaneously, and I cannot supervise 150 students with their code. No. I don't have the time for that. Okay, maybe. Well, first I would like to ask. So we talked a lot about coding. Yep. And I can imagine that, but if we stick with students for a moment, so what other AI tools, AI help can students get besides just the coding? Or is this the main thing?
No, well, no, certainly not. So many of my students in the past have been struggled with writing. And I think writing is an important skill to have because it's a tool to also shape your logical thinking processes, right? You put something down on paper and then you try to re-engineer your argument to make it better, right? That's what writing is. And there are a bunch of tools out there that help you get your point across, like Grammarly or Quillbot that is being used. But actually, I need to, I need to say, I see many students also applying it blindly. There's like a thing, oh, it doesn't sound good. Oh, let me just run it through Quillbot. But then you haven't really developed your argument. So yeah, it's a big risk. But any tool that can facilitate that, like help students become better writers, that's, I think, good.
Yeah, that's my experience as well. That I think the problem here is, but I also see a possible solution for that problem, that if you look at the tools that exist that help you write better, they are good, for instance, at general English, but scientific English is different than general English. And I notice that with students, and they give me a text, and I look at the text and I say, look, you use this word and this word and this word. What do they actually mean? Yeah. And then the answer is, ChatGPT filled those in. Yeah. And so I think these words mean the same thing. And in everyday language, you would just throw them out. But in scientific language, you have to be very specific.
There are already researches about where they looked at several abstracts from different theses, where certain words are, since the launch of ChatGPT, were increased very much, very high, like utilize. Or if you start a text with "in today's digital age," well, then you know that a student just uses ChatGPT and didn't look at it for himself. So maybe that's also one for the teachers to remember. But
but I, personally, I became a better writer through using tools such as Grammarly, and it's becoming also better and better and giving better advice and I'm almost starting to imitate some of the behavior of these AI tools.
I think I recognize AI written text, although probably if I wouldn't recognize it, then it's simply that I think it's human written.
Yeah.
But I think usually it tends to be more, let's say, have less actual content. It's more talk and less content. And I recognize that very often what students submit. But I think the help is great for students that have troubles formulating things in English. And usually I tell them, look, you just write it, that you make sure that your content is there, and then throw it into an AI tool and let it rewrite certain sentences, and then check if the sentences are still okay.
Or getting feedback on presentations, right? So why should I do that? Like, it takes me, 15 minutes to flip through a presentation that students may submit, and I just recently discovered a GPT. GPTs are like apps on ChatGPT that gives feedback on PowerPoint presentations. And I used it on my own slide, and I was a little overwhelmed when I saw the feedback. I didn't score very well, but that was good. A very quick way to get feedback, and students can make use of these things too.
Okay, I haven't tried that, but maybe I should do that once, because probably I don't agree with everything.
The feedback I got was that my slides are busier than a Tokyo subway during rush hour. That's literally what was said by this tool, and I improved my slide deck after that. Yes.
Okay. Well, if you use it like that, like, okay, these are hints that the AI gives, so I can think about that and maybe change it. But as long as you don't use it blindly, maybe that's what we have to go for, that we actually teach students not to use it blindly. Because that's the thing, of course, that you're a student, you have a party, you go to bed late, you still have an assignment to do. And I know the teacher said I shouldn't use it blindly, but at least I can submit something, and then, the teacher accepts it, so let's do this again next time. And then you get lazy and you...
Yeah, but how do we get everybody ready for this new age, right? That's a big challenge, I think.
Well, I think a problem for students is that if you would use it in a lazy way, that you are fine getting to your first year, and you start getting troubles in your second year, and your third year you cannot manage anymore.
Yeah.
But then it's very late. You cannot change anymore. You cannot go back. So it has to be hammered probably in the early years. But that's my thought on that. Do you want to add something?
No, I think I agree, and I cannot agree more. I need to say.
Okay. So shall we look a little bit from the perspective of the teacher? Because I know that there's a lot of work that you two do in this respect. So, well, I leave it to you to open this.
Well, in the perspective to a teacher, like I said, I think there are really some tasks for a teacher which takes a lot of time. Hannes and I experience it, especially at the departments, there goes a lot of time into giving feedback to thesis, or can you help me with this one, Hannes? Giving feedback to thesis, that's one already, I think.
Yeah.
So if we could help those teachers by improving their efficiency with providing the correct tools, they will have more time for more valuable tasks, like doing their own research or giving the lectures. Instead of providing feedback based on just the language or the structure of a thesis, the structure of an introduction. And if they have like this thesis body in the form of an AI tool who will do the first check, and of course they will be the owner of the graduated part. But I think that's a good example.
Yeah, definitely. Like you cannot imagine how many rounds of like revising a research proposal I have to make simply because it's not exactly in the structure that I'm expecting it or that I'm instructing students to do it. And then more automated feedback helps me smoothen that process. I personally have used it a lot in changing my exams and making my exams better. So I'm using digital exams, so everything is on a computer. And this tool that that we use here at Tilburg gives also feedback on the quality of my questions. So after an exam has been done, I get like a green light, yellow light, or red light on some of those questions. And I started to tackle these red questions because I have a little bit more time now with this tool availability. And I try to change the thinking level of these questions. So some of my questions are super simple. What is looping? That's a knowledge question. Or how could you apply looping in this or that? That's more a comprehension question, right? And you can elevate some of these questions to become questions of higher thinking levels, to really get the most out of this and really test whether students understand it. So for example, in a particular situation, does it make more sense to use a for loop or a while loop, right? That's a more difficult question to answer, and they need to have good arguments. And I'm using prompts with ChatGPT to help me do an initial draft of these questions. Or I have asked an open question. Open questions are where students write open answers, and it takes a lot of time to grade it. And then I'm using AI tools to help me make it a closed question, multiple choice, for example, or a ranking question that generates efficiencies in grading, right? Because it can automatically be graded. So I've been using it a lot for this. But there's also negative sides of this, right? So I must also say that I created an answer key that when actually, starting to grade the exams, I figured out that, actually I was a little too quick on that one because the answer key wasn't really good. And I adapted it and I catched it. So it's important that we don't give full control to these machines, but like have the human in the loop who is there and assures that it meets the quality thresholds. But like examination, that really was a game changer for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm slightly surprised here because I tried to do this as well, and I said, okay, I need questions on this topic, and they need to focus on this, and I got questions. These are useless questions. So the 3 questions, of which 2 were basically the same question formulated in a different way, and then you got questions. What is the answer? And then this answer is simply wrong, and not only is it wrong, it gives me the wrong answer, and then it gives me a wrong argument why it's the wrong answer, and then it gives a second argument that actually is counter to the first argument, and so I don't know. This is just useless stuff. That's what my impression was.
Well, I started from an exam that existed, right, and I wanted to make it better for graders to make it more efficient. So I already had a good question. I already had an answer key, and I don't know about you or Matthijs, but it takes me a lot of time to formulate things very well. It's a very difficult process. And that process I can outsource to a machine who can do a first draft. but I don't really start from scratch. Anything I've tried from scratch just didn't work very well.
No.
You need to provide the right context, and my exam was a good context, I guess.
Yeah, and that's also what you can do. Maybe how we see building applications is that you can also provide context by using a framework where you can load in like your own internal documents. So, for example, you can create a chatbot about your own course material. Yeah. So a lecturer can choose like I want to upload my slide deck, or I want to upload the book I'm working with, and you provide the context in this document to the prompt what is sent to the large language model, and therefore it gives you also an output with the broader context of your own course. And that's also something we are developing, that you have like this virtual teaching assistant based on course material, instead of students using this in ChatGPT with all the data it's trained on, and there's a lot of hallucination, there's a lot of things that are incorrect. So I think that's also a better way to work with. So that's also a way about how we think about these applications. These models are really powerful and it's really great, but you need to customize it for your own needs. So especially for students, you need to customize it with the correct input, as I can say.
Yeah, so
this is another direction, but
but I think actually, so I can imagine. So the exam stuff, and I can really imagine. Okay, give me a variant on this question, etc. It can help and can give you inspiration. I don't think it will save you a lot of time in creating an exam. Maybe if it can pinpoint some errors that you would otherwise leave in, but I have that experience as well, that making an exam takes, so usually preparing an exam takes about 3 days generally for me, and an exam that students have to do in, let's say, 2 hours. And,
I want to make one comment. So creating new questions is difficult, right? And you want to keep on changing questions. I use ChatGPT to write code to generate questions. So in my course, it's on data preparation in R. That's another course, and students need to, merge different data sets and things like that. Yeah. So I don't want these data sets to be the same. So now I have code that generates new questions every year. I hope it will save me time. It cost me a lot of time to develop this, but you're right. Like, I think in none of the innovations I really saved a lot of time because I'm so passionate and go full-fledged into it.
But maybe that's the thing, right? The people who are passionate about it, they will develop it for you, and and maybe with your experience, you will save a lot of time from.
I hope that.
But the saving time, really, what it is about. I would think that you will save less time than you would hope, at least on creating exams. So, grading stuff, that might be another thing, but isn't it just, I spent that time on it, but the quality gets higher?
Yeah, it's both. It's efficiency, which makes you able to reallocate time. For example, more contact hours with students. That's one of the outcomes. Or quality. These are interlinked, right? If I save a bit of time here, I can invest more in quality elsewhere.
But the other thing that you mentioned, Matthijs, is creating an AI assistant for students that you just load your course material in and they can converse with it, which I can imagine would be incredibly useful. But AI, as it is now, and as it will be, as an AI specialist, I would say, coming 10 years, maybe even longer, AI has no understanding, which means that answers that it generates are text-based. Just it's a reaction on the text that the student puts in. So it doesn't understand the student, and it doesn't understand its own answer. So how often does this go right? How often does it go wrong? And how do you keep the quality high enough?
These are great questions, and I would say we need to test it. So starting September, we're launching a pilot here at Tilburg with courses at various schools, where the lecture material that lecturers have available on Canvas gets loaded into the LLM for context. And students can ask questions like, in the slide deck of week 3, I don't understand the concept of A. Can you explain it to me in simpler words? So think about it like a fenced large language model that somewhat is trained just to move in the context of the material that we've given. But there are going to be 2 cool features in this tool. One is monitoring, right? So we will be able to monitor the interaction of students. And I don't think about what they actually do, but what is the level of interaction? How often do they use it? For what purpose do they use it? Like, do they use it for simplification, or do they use it for I don't know, for making summaries, right? We'll be able to tell. And then the second feature that we want to have in this tool is this is not a good word, an escalate button, but like talk to a human, talk to your teacher, forward the conversation that we're having to the lecturer of this course so that we can get some expert insight here. And it's just like a great way to learn about the potential of this. Because right now, actually, we just learn by anecdotal evidence, right? Somebody may put in a bad prompt and get bad results, and they say, oh, it doesn't work. So this will be the first time in which we can actually generate empirical evidence on what works, what do we need to improve, and maybe it comes out that it's not possible and that we need to wait another 5 to 10 years. That could be one outcome. But I'm actually looking at the first set of results just by using it myself, and I'm pretty confident it can be very helpful. But we need to identify where it works and where it doesn't work. And developing this in-house and making it available to our students gives us a very controlled environment to test this and evaluate this.
Yeah, this is very interesting, especially from a research perspective, I think, in this case. But if you look at how a GPT is trained, so it uses generally a standard large language model, so it knows the language, and then it gets fed with questions, and somebody looks at the answers, and then we say, okay, this is a great answer, this is a bad answer. And then after a while, so because the GPT then is trained on these are good answers, these are bad answers, after a while it gets better and better and better. So you can do that for course material, of course, that you just say to students, look, we've loaded this data, these books and this material into a GPT. You're gonna interact with it. We're gonna see whether the answers that it gives are fine. So you will hear from us, no, forget about this answer, this is bad. But this will train the GPT, and it will after a while be able to give the right answers without us checking them, although it will still make mistakes probably. But since most students will have the same kind of questions, after a while those questions will be answered well. So that's how you can probably go about it. But
and students would use it anyways. I just need to say this, right? So if we don't do it, we cannot assume that students don't do it. They upload slides decks and video lectures massively to ChatGPT and ask questions about it, but then we don't have any grip on what comes out. So this would be a way for us to be still on top of our game a bit. Sorry.
That's a great response, actually. But because I saw one extra problem on top of this, and that's a problem that I think a lot of AI has nowadays, is that it stops learning after a while. Because, well, you have trained it whole GPT and it works well, but then you cannot change your course material anymore, at least not in a big sense, because then you have to retrain this. And that might be an issue. And you see that in AI in general, and all these tools that are generally used. OpenAI, as far as I understand, has stopped gathering new material to train their tools in 2022 because there's so much material now that has been generated by AI, and we cannot see the difference anymore. But we shouldn't train our AI based on AI-generated texts, because then it gets worse. So we need human texts. And that might be an issue, that AI stops further evolving.
Yeah. Also, I think that's a really fair point. And I think it becomes a little bit more technical, but also for the virtual TA, we are working with Francesco Lelli, who is also a professor in computer science, and he also references through LangChain, and that's like an open source framework, which makes it possible for AI developers to cooperate with LLMs in their own applications. And you can also work on different kind of workflows. So, for example, you have the prompt. You get the prompt checks with the internal sources. You load in, and it has an initial answer or gives an initial answer. A second workflow could be that this initial answer is then checked on the internet, because LangChain provides sources like DuckDuckGo search, I think, and then it's searched on the internet and it compares the results on the internet with the initial answer, and then provides the second answer, who in this time is double checked. And of course, this all happens in the back end. So in the front end at the virtual TA, you will just see a quick result. But in the back end, there's a different workflow. And for example, at the course from Francesco, we can then test different kind of workflows, maybe create 1 or 2 different TAs. And just as you would do at the end of a course with a lecture or with a teaching assistant, you will provide feedback about what virtual TA do I think was the best or has the best output. And also from a research perspective, it's really interesting to see what workflow works best. And there are solutions like LangChain providing this. So that's also very cool to see, I think, for the future maybe. Yeah.
And it hasn't been like when we talk about virtual teaching assistants, I don't think it is not our ambition to like retrain large language models, because the amount of documents that we could ever feed them is way too little compared to the models that were trained commercially. But what we can do is to nudge the GPT about the knowledge that is on the slide decks and in the books right now. The other problem you alluded to was, will we train AI based on AI-generated content? Yeah, that's a true risk, and I see that we need solutions to this, but probably there will be solutions. And maybe also we should teach our students to be like human, right? After all, like actually to engage in real... Yeah, I mean, engage into real content creation. I mean, the only example I can come up with is making music, right? I mean, it's a very rewarding experience to learn, master an instrument and play an instrument. And just because AI can generate very good music, it really cannot mean that we shouldn't do the things we enjoy as humans. And nudge students to still be that, because that's part of what we are. And then there will always be some content that's generated by humans that can be used to train things for people who are more lazy. I don't know.
Yeah, I am a little bit, well, let's say skeptical is, I was more skeptical than I am now, because I've seen more possibilities than I had thought would be possible 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I am still a bit afraid. For instance, I can recognize AI-generated images. I can because I just look at it's clear.
That's the style, right?
And then basically, okay, see, it's because it's indeed the same style. And then when I start looking, and there you see the 7 fingers on the hand, and so that's clear that it's AI. And you don't see these kind of things at the first glance. And the first glance you say, this is a nice picture, but it feels AI. It just feels like that, and that is because it's limited in what it does. So it's trained on a particular kind of style, and you get that style out of it, and you recognize that. But it is better than most people can produce by themselves. So they start using this. So we get far more homogeneous kind of texts and images and music, and it feels that the human spark is then missing.
Yeah, but I think what Hannes told about creating music, you get more enjoyment learning how to play on a piano than just saying to an AI play piano.
Yeah, but isn't it, let's say, very demotivating?
Yeah,
to know that you have to spend 10 years to get to the level that an AI just throws out by itself.
But that's what we've been doing. Like, I learned an instrument when I was a young kid, but I mean, I didn't compare myself to the best musicians in the world, and I actually couldn't care less. I was just playing my songs in my local community, and that was good enough, and that made me happy. So I think it's not going to deter people of going for it and learning new things. And you don't know? Okay, that's interesting.
No, because, I don't play an instrument, but I definitely, when I was younger, I was drawing a lot, and people complimented me on the quality of my drawings. And when I look at all the drawings, I think this is really bad. But at the time, it was better than my friends could produce. So that's why I got lots of compliments, and that stimulated me to continue.
But you're not
and
going to
if I'm drawing and then my friend is producing images just with an AI, and I cannot do that.
But we do not get credits for this. So I experienced this, a lot. Like you can produce an image and maybe you get a laugh, but it was AI. You don't get the award for it. Like on a school. Okay, so in my research, right? Sometimes I've also tried using ChatGPT and make an initial draft of some of these ideas. I mean, I quickly learned this is not going to get me any credit by anyone because you recognize it, because it's not original, and So I feel like I don't think using AI content makes the person who uses this become recognized for it.
Okay.
So there is always room to value your own contributions, your own creativity.
Yeah, this is only sideways related to AI in education, maybe, but it is still there. So, what motivates people to learn? And I see some dangers there.
Yeah,
but you have some answers to that possibly are indeed correct, and it might actually be stimulating to some people. Because I, for instance, coding, I enjoy that. Even if I'm not as good as some other people, I just enjoy doing it. But then you really need that enjoyment.
Fun fact, obviously ChatGPT is also part of the conversation at home. I have 2 kids, 6 and 9 years old, and they overhear things at the dinner table. And I don't know what it was about. I don't really remember what it was, but I suggested, we can ask, I think it was for the Sinterklaas poem, right? It was like, we can ask ChatGPT, and say, no, I want to do this myself. So I think it's...
And it is really bad in it. So.
Yeah.
So it was good that you're doing it yourself.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Let's one more thing. So now we discussed a little bit of what teachers can do. And I think we also discussed the dangers that I wanted to discuss. Are there a couple of things that we are missing here? Because you talked about exam generation, you talked about checking thesis on style, etc. Which actually we tell our students, look, we're not going to check for that because you have to do that yourself, and they can use AI tools if they want. So I'm not doing that for them. I check content. So are there more things that would be good for teachers? You're developing a whole, if I understand it, a whole curriculum basically for teachers on how to do this. Or what are you actually doing within Tilburg?
So in our working group, we have 4 areas in which we concentrate. The first one being gathering workshop material that many of our colleagues have already developed from the first hour onwards at various schools, and we try to bring that content together and scale up teaching that content. So, for example, we recently launched an e-learning module for AI for our teachers. Soon there's going to be one for students. Teachers are able to book members of our group to come talk in their classroom and teach students about prompt engineering to bridge the knowledge gap that exists between our teaching faculty right now, who may not be versatile in these tools and what we know. That's one thing. Second thing is we've talked a lot about this tool development. I think Tilburg has a lot of things to gain from specialized tooling. We can adapt it to the Tilburg context. We can make it secure. We can ensure that data, personal data, is not going to be transmitted to those large language models. I think that's an important role we can play. The third aspect is that we have a blog at tilburg.ai. Where we post about latest tutorials and use cases. We're growing quite a lot with this blog. It's publicly available to everyone who wants to access it. And I would just say, spread it to your students, spread it to your faculty, wherever you are, wherever you teach. We've gathered a lot of education-specific knowledge that can get students and faculty started right away. And then the fourth area, that's a big one, actually. And that's trying to affect and to make recommendations on 2 aspects. First, policy. What should be allowed, what should not be allowed in terms of AI, and IT infrastructure. Let me talk about IT infrastructure first. So we're not yet ready fully to deploy AI apps on campus at large scale. We do not have data processing agreements with the largest commercial suppliers of large language models to start. We need that very soon and as quick as possible. And with our working group, we try to bring that up on the agenda and try to have like a good vision of what we want to build, but also activate the right persons here on campus to help us get there. And I see lots of engagement ever since we started this working group 2.5 months ago, and people are amazing and supportive, and I hope we can get there. But there is still a number of check marks that we need to have. At the same time, we keep on experimenting and building things, and we try to make sure that the IT infrastructure develops. And this other aspect is rules and regulations, right? Like, for example, should students have the right to use AI? If so, is Tilburg obliged to supply them access to a safe tool? Yes or no? I mean, these are questions that are out there for which Tilburg, at least in my understanding, doesn't have a developed answer right now. So
no, and I don't think there's a standard answer for that available. Because this is, of course, something that all universities and high schools and the University of Application struggle with.
Yeah, but I think by showing people inspiring use cases and actually bringing things to the classroom like we do in our working group, I think that will get us activated to also arrange the other things to be in place. At least that's what I see by seeing how active everyone here is.
And also the great thing is that we work together with members from all different kind of schools at Tilburg, so that you can also discuss how it goes at every school, and not everybody. For example, we at TAISIG are giving workshops, and that other schools aren't getting workshops, or that we combine the power of all the schools and get one strategy instead of 4 or 5. So I think that's also a cool
And we've
thing.
talked a lot about this tutor, right? But that's also not what Matthijs imagined or what I imagined. But Tilburg Law School has a fantastic tech department, educational developers that have been designing games for like decades. And some persons there just started playing with it and somewhat made it work. And they showed it to us. And we now try to scale up this idea so that it becomes easy to use, like a point-and-click interface on Canvas. But yeah, I think it's just great to source these ideas and bring them together and then disseminate them again across all schools. That's the role that we can play here.
And also to come back with the danger part, I think an important thing is also to make people, how we call it, AI literate, to teach them and to educate them about what are the danger parts or what do you have to take in mind when using these applications. And of course, initiatives like the TAISIG Talks or giving workshops or our platform where we write about AI is going to help. So I think that's also an important thing to do to educate people about how to use it. I heard I was just listening in the train to one of these podcasts, and I heard you make the comparison with the race of social media, and if you were a little bit quicker there with also pointing out the critical part of it or how to use it, then maybe Twitter won't be, or X won't be such a place about how it is right now with just people saying horrific things sometimes.
I'm pretty sure that we cannot foresee all the dangers and problems that using AI in education will bring in the near future and the further future. There will be things, but at least we cannot stop it. So we cannot stop, and we can, and therefore we have to be aware of that these things.
I think a good strategy that program directors, for example, could follow is to discuss with course coordinators in their programs when to use AI for what, and also create a place where AI is not used, both in teaching and in assessment, to just like foster that, human aspect of doing things. We've talked a lot about it. So, and I think that will equip us for a future in which maybe we want to reduce the use of AI in certain aspects as we learn, so that we still have an active base on which to fall back. That could be one strategy. Plus, they're very enjoyable because I still want to make music. I don't want to like these AI songs. Jeez.
Yeah, but, and I don't want to be in a world where in 10 years' time suddenly we find that students didn't learn anymore what they should learn, and now but we cannot resolve it anymore because now we have a whole generation of students that cannot do their jobs. And and but I don't think that will happen that quickly. And when I look at my students, a lot of them are actually very enthusiastic about the topics that we're teaching, etc. They actually want to learn these things. That varies between different educational programs, I know that. But
we need to foster a mindset where students come to campus not to get a diploma, but to learn and grow. And I have a couple of students who just come for the diploma. I think the job is that we inspire them to be that other type of student. And I think then everything should be okay.
Okay. That's nice. That's also a nice way to go towards an ending. Is there anything that we still want to discuss?
I think we need to form our opinion at universities about bigger questions and the implications of AI. I mean, our group is very much focused on action in the short and medium term, but we need to really talk about the long-term implications. All right, so what about job replacement? Like, if this actually works as intended, will we be able to save time on grading? And does that mean there are going to be fewer lecturers or assistants to do grading? What do we do as an organization? Is that something we accept, or is this something we do not accept? I think having such conversations could be very valuable. Another thing is about flexibility in education. So I foresee a likely future where study programs can be more flexibly offered to students, kind of an individual study program to everyone with a machine that supports this. Is that something we want to experiment with, or do we want to say we are always in charge of the program? I mean, they're like big questions, and maybe the flexibilization is a much less bigger question than the replacement question. But I think we should engage in a dialogue about it, because our institutions, I think, is facing a risk, right? It's facing a risk from big tech. I mean, commercial suppliers already have great educational technology developed. I mean, one of the risks is that we become less relevant in the future. But yeah, we also need to think about how we can mitigate the big risks of AI here at this institutional level. And that's not the role of our working group. But I think it's good to have these discussions at a broad level.
Okay. Well, then we leave it at Tilburg AI is the Tilburg.ai is the website that people can go to if they want more information.
That's correct.
That's an easy one to remember. So, thank you. It was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. Yeah.